This is a real thing. There have been many strange experiments in free-fall pits that were stuck in the air by ropes and caused death at room temperature. Ellison Cave in Georgia, USA. There are many huge, deep pits in it. One of them has a vertical depth of more than 170 meters. It's about 50 stories tall. There is no barrier here, straight through, than wood. There is a feeling of free fall. Therefore, it is also called a free fall pit. In 2013, a man named Dwight freefall and fell. Fortunately, he was only 12 meters high at that time. He was only injured and carried back. There have been more than 10 rescue incidents here in total. One of the more serious cases occurred on February 12, 2011. There were 10 people at the University of Florida, 5 men and 5 women. To celebrate Grant's birthday, an expedition trip was specially organized. After much discussion, decided to head to Ellison Cave Snow in Georgia, a few hundred kilometers away, to visit the legendary Deep Crater. And they drove down the hill. After changing the equipment, someone suggested that they did not want to bring a mobile phone, so as not to be disturbed by outside information and phone calls. So everybody put their cell phones in the car and went up the hill. It was 18 degrees, plus mountain climbing. No one was wearing thick clothes. After an hour, they arrived at the entrance of the cave. The entrance looked very narrow. One by one, they stoop in. It was pitch black inside, and you could only appreciate the strange shape of the rock wall by the light of the flashlight. The temperature here is about 10 degrees cooler than outside, although they have been exercising, but the cold breath in the cave was still hard to hide. And now they're not going to go any further. Although it has not yet reached the legendary freefall pit, but the further inside, the colder it gets. And among the 10 people, only Grant and Michael, a little bit of caving experience. The rest are inexperienced newbies, so they decided to stay put. I planned to enjoy the beautiful scenery here and went back out. You can hang around. You can also hear the sound of waterfalls flowing here. It's a pity that you can't see the waterfall. A classmate's backpack accidentally fell into a deep pit. There are still some valuables in the bag, but the pit cannot be seen at a glance. After some thought, everyone thought that this was not the main pit and it should not be very deep. As the captain, Grant offered to go down and look for the backpack. Considering the possible danger, Michael told Grant not to push himself, but Grant patted him on the chest and confidently said he could. No problem. So he took out the rope carried by the team and found a nearby rock to fix it. He grabbed the rope and made a prayer gesture before slowly descending in. Here he passed a raised rock wall. At this moment, he raised the corners of his mouth, full of confidence. He also suddenly felt a wave of cold air. The water droplets from the waterfall next to it are approaching. The sound of the waterfall heard above originated from here. At first, Grant didn't care about the droplets of water coming from the waterfall. He thinks he will get his backpack soon. Just bear with it, and it's over. But immediately he had the idea of giving up. At this time, the biting cold water had initialized his whole body. At this moment, the waterfall could directly hit Grant. The water here is close to freezing. The degree of coldness exceeded the tolerance of the body. Scope. Grant quickly adjusted the lock and decided to start climbing up. Due to the cold shivering of the body and the excessive operation, the ascending air was accidentally tangled with the rope and got stuck. He was in a hurry and panicked even more. When Grant tried to organize the rope, his eyes were flat by the water, and it was difficult to open. At this moment, he raised his head and shouted to his teammates. However, the call was almost overshadowed by the initializing sound of the waterfall. The students up there couldn't hear what Grant was saying at all, but he could vaguely tell that he was in trouble. That guy had no experience and was at a loss. So Michael immediately put on his seatbelt and went down to rescue Grant. When he could see Grant, he found that Grant was basically surrounded by water. He was trembling and breathing rapidly. Michael looked up and reported Grant's situation to the students above. I hope everyone can find a way to rescue Grant for safety reasons. Some students rushed down the mountain to seek help. Michael didn't realize that his clothes were slowly getting wet from the water droplets floating up the waterfall. He was so anxious that he just wanted to go down and pull Grant up. He continued to let go and help Grant. Just as he was about to reach out and pull Grant, he found that he couldn't move. He was in the same situation as Grant. The rope caught her and the dead up and down can't move. He tried to save himself while shouting to his classmates above, but there was still no way to untie the rope. The inexperienced students above can only wait anxiously. They tried to encourage them to persevere by talking to Grant and Michael. But after about half an hour, no matter how much the students shouted, they never heard the echo below. About 2 hours later, several students rushed to the scene with a rescue team. They started by giving all the students in the room warm supplies. Then everyone shouted down again. Unfortunately, there was still no response. The rescue workers immediately discussed countermeasures and went down to save people. But by the time the rescue team loaded up and got to Grunt and Michael, it was too late. They've all lost their vital sign. My classmates were devastated when they learned of the death of their two partners. It took the rescue team 6 hours to bring the deceased Grunt and Michael back. The second incident took place on March 10, 1999. A 28-year-old adventure enthusiast named Hal also came to Ellison Cave at 11:30 p.m. with two friends. They had just begun with "Good luck until you visit the free-fall pit of the main cave." The three of them started walking back. Hal told his two friends to get up first. He stood behind himself. On his way back, the ascender suddenly got stuck. What's more unfortunate is that there happened to be a large number of waterfall droplets floating over from this position. The situation was basically the same as Grant's. At this time, his position is about 45 meters away from the bottom of the deep pit. The two friends were about 100 meters away from him. The pit is filled with the echoes of waterfalls. I tried screaming for help, but the screams will only be swallowed up by the ruthless waterfall in this freezing cold waterfall. He could only silently choose to save himself. Two friends up there never saw Hal come up. They were anxious, but they could do nothing. It is better to leave the cave and seek help. The rescue team received a call at 2:30 a.m., but they arrived at the cave at 9 a.m. When they found Hal had no pulse. In fact, he had been dead for several hours due to hypothermia caused by his body being initialized by the waterfall for a long time.